Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'm not certified, but self-proclaimed. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to part two. I think I'll just get things rolling. Um, and it would probably be helpful if everyone muted themselves. And, actually, I want to adjust a setting. Burp. Yes, that's so much better. Okay, cool. All right, so welcome to part two of the Google training. Today I'll start by sharing the slide deck here. And I'll just kind of go over the main things. So again, we're just talking about some helpful tips and tricks and some of my favorite little bits of Google Workspace world that have come in handy at my other job. And I'll be doing some introductory demos of Google Workspace apps. And today we're mainly focusing on Gmail and Drive. I'm going to show one thing from Google Docs that's cool. That wasn't available the last time we did this training, the part one. And I'll give some examples of how individual and organizational workflows can adjust to adopt these apps and features, and they'll try and share some lessons learned and support resources so you can help yourself learn more about these things too. And I have a very tiny monitor, so it's hard for me to demo and see hands or hands raised. So I just want to encourage you all to feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. Also, as we learned last time, sometimes I think I'm sharing my screen, but I'm really not sharing my screen and I'm talking about something. So feel free to be like, Carrie, I think you need to share your screen again. So anywho, does everyone, would it be helpful if I repaste the links in the chat? Or I wonder if someone might do me a solid and copy and paste the links in the chat and then re-chat them. That would be good. Let's see here. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing now. For the moment, anyway. Bloop. Okay, so if you want to refer to the documents, let me just flip to my notes to make sure I stay on target here. So we're gonna start by looking at some of my favorite little Gmail tidbits, and again, I'm going to be doing a screen share and demo, and unfortunately on my tiny screen I can't see you all. So as I go through things, feel free to ask a question. I'll stop at the end of this section and ask a question too. But we are also recording this, so you can always refer back to it if you want to see the demo again in your own time. And so let's do this. I apologize for the infinite mirror screen effect here. All right. So, and some of these things I'm sure you all know, or some of you may know. So if you do, I'm sorry if I'm repeating this. But the first thing I wanted to show you all that is just a handy dandy little thing is how to quickly save attachments to Google Drive. So anytime you have an email with an attachment like this is, there's a little button right here. Actually, I should make this bigger because again, I have a tiny screen. This add all to drive, you can click on this. And of course, all of these already exist in Drive. Blast. Here, let's use this one as an example. So this is a file attached to an email, so you can click add to drive on the individual file, or if there were multiple attachments, you could click add all to drive. And this saves you from having to save it on your workstation if you prefer the cloud storage, and you can immediately organize it. So the default will save to my drive, but if you want to move it into a shared drive, you can do that just by navigating around here. And when you find its home, you can just click the move here button and it will automatically save the file to Google Drive, which is soups awesome. Another thing I wanted to show you, this is a callback to the part 1 training where we looked at tasks. And this is, I can't remember if we went over this or not, but this is a reminder. So in any email that you have along this top edge menu, you can turn any email into a task, and it will default by putting the email subject in as the task, so you can edit it. You can edit it to say what you want. You can add additional information, and you can assign a date, a deadline date to it if that's helpful. And the nice thing about this is, so even if I say I move this email into a folder and it's not in my inbox anymore, I can retrieve that email from the task simply by clicking that, and it takes me directly to the email. So it's a nice way to not lose track of to-do items that come into your inbox. And I am actually going to move this, well, I'll move that later. I was going to move it back. So that's a really neato thing. And then similar to creating a task from an email, you can also say you have an email that's about a meeting that you need to add to your calendar. You can go to these 3 dots and you can do create an event, and it will allow you to create a Google Calendar event directly from that email. It defaults to adding guests that are included on the email, and it also will populate the email topic in the details. I'm not going to create this, but that's just a really cool little tip. Any questions so far? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. All right, so these are again a couple more settings that I like to use, and there's a lot more settings out there that are really helpful. These just happen to be some of the ones that I really enjoy when it comes to Gmail. So the next one is enabling inboxes. So you can notice that normally if you don't enable inboxes, every email will come into just one inbox. And you can see that I have a promotions inbox and a forums inbox. And I chose to enable those because it helps to filter the Google group emails into the forums inbox, and then any kind of like newsletters and stuff like that I sign up for get filtered into promotions, which I find helps keep my inbox a little bit less cluttered. And you can turn those on by going to the Gmail settings. And if you go to inboxes, you can choose to enable from these inboxes. So if you're someone who does a lot of social stuff, social media stuff for the library, you can enable this and it will filter any social media emails into that inbox, which can be kind of handy. One of the other, I keep saying one of the other, this whole training is just another thing that I really like. So an additional little tool that I really love are these stars, which you can find in the Gmail settings under the general label. So the inbox settings are under inbox. These stars are under general. And you can drag and drop these different symbols into this in use line and prioritize them. And the way these function is that when an email comes in, there is a default star that you can add a star to it. If you enable these additional stars, what I like to do is if there's something that has an action item in, I need to make sure it's kind of, draws my attention more in my inbox. All I have to do is click twice and it will add, I like how this is called red bang. It will add a red bang to this email. And then I also have the next click too fast, Carrie. The next click after that, I have a green check. So if it's something I want to make sure that I've done, but maybe I don't have time to move the email to where I want it to live, not in my inbox, I can put a check on it and come back to it later. And then you just kind of click through these to decide which one you want, and you just keep clicking to turn them on and off. So those are just fun little tidbits. Yet another tip that I really love is Gmail provides you the ability to make email variations, which means you can make your own email essentially. So in this example, I made the email, which is it's the default of your email, and then you do the plus symbol, and then whatever you want the variation to be. So in this example, I have KMacLaurie plus newsletter at noblenet.org. And I use this email address when I sign up for newsletters. And the nice thing about making an email variant is that you can combine them with filters. So the way that you do that is beep, bop, boop. You go to Gmail settings, filters, and blocked addresses. So you would click create a new filter. And then in this example, it would be, let's just pretend it's like that. So in this example, I would say any email coming into my email variant, and you can add additional parameters. And then you can enable these here, which is great. You can have it skip your inbox, mark it as red starred. I like to apply labels right away, and then apply these other rules kind of to your liking, basically. And just to show you my newsletter, variation. I have it set to skip my inbox, apply the label newsletters, which means it gets dumped directly into the, on the left-hand edge under labels, it gets dumped directly into this newsletter label. I have it never go to spam, but I also categorize them as promotions. So they'll go directly into this label and I can see that they're in there. And then when I have a free minute, I can go and kind of click through whatever newsletters have come in. The next tip I wanted to show you was layouts. And these are relatively new features that just came out, I think, within about the last 6 months or so. So you access layouts by just composing an email as normal. Can you see this pop up? Can someone verbally confirm? Can you see the new email pop up?
Yep.
Thank you. I just have it set to, like, share the window. So I didn't know if this was going to consider it a different window. Oh, why is it doing that? That's weird. Y'all, why? Hang on. Why is this happening? Oh, there we go. Oh, I see. Wow, what is happening right now? Sorry, something is throwing me through a loop. Here we go. Okay. Wow. So you want to look along this bottom edge and you can click select a layout. And this is kind of Gmail's version of like building a quick and easy promotional email. They have some basic settings that you can customize. And I know that, we have a style guide with Beverly Public Library, so you would want to bring whatever layout you are customizing into line with the style guide. And these can be really helpful if, say, you're emailing a book group and you want to send a kind of snazzier email than maybe just a regular email, or a program RSVP list. That could be another thing if you needed to email folks. This last Gmail setting I wanted to show you all was this. Let me move this out of the way. Burp. Is this toggle multi-send mode. And the multi-send mode is basically turns this email into almost as if you were sending something from a MailChimp or some sort of email marketing platform. So instead of having to paste in 50 email addresses in the CC field, like if you're emailing everyone for your book club or something like that, you can toggle this multi-send mode and it will just send the email directly to one person and just show the one email address. I don't know if that made sense the way I worded that, but it's a really cool option.
Carrie, can you show me how you get there again?
Yeah, absolutely. So just in your Gmail, if you go to compose, down along the bottom edge, there's like an envelope icon here. I don't know if you can, let me try and zoom in a smidge. I know my screen is really small. It's this toggle multi-send mode. And then even though you would still paste, you would put 50 email addresses in the to field, the way the receiver gets them is as if it's an individual email from them, and they're not seeing the other 50 emails, that you're sending to.
So you don't have to carbon copy or the BCC when you're setting it up. It just goes in the regular to field. You're not
right
adding the
right
addresses to the blind BCC. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I could see that function pairing well with communicating with, programming attendees that you need to reach, or, other examples like that where you're trying to protect people's privacy and
Mhm.
information more. Okay. Any Gmail questions? That is the end of my favorite Gmail gems. I was just wondering if anyone had anything they wanted to ask. All right. So some before I move on to the next thing, which is talking about Google Drive, I'll just go over some of the workflow shifts at my other job that we adopted with our, heavy Gmail use or not. So, as an organization, some of the changes we made were identifying like exactly what needed to be an email. So we agreed that we would always ask ourselves, can this be a chat instead of an email? And then we would ask, oh, if it should be a chat, should it be in a space that we've created related to that project? Or if it should be like a direct chat or group chat. We always attach files we're referring to in emails, even if we think people should know where they are. We just try to always get in the habit of attaching them again. And then for individual workflows, what we really have had to work on doing is stopping downloading attachments to our work computers and then using that save directly to drive function. And we really try and pay attention to when we need to reply all and or not. And then a lot of people really liked leveraging, and I like leveraging that, turning an email into a task. I find that really handy so I'm not losing a really important ask that came into my inbox. Yeah, anything out there before I move on to Google Drive? All right. I have this toggle for my screen recorder that's in the way, which is a me problem, but okay. So before I get into my fave Google Drive things, I do want to show you all a feature that the first time I did this training was not available yet. They hadn't rolled it out to the nonprofit accounts, and I'm really excited that it is available now. So this is again related to tasks. And what it's now possible to do and this is specifically Google Docs. This is not a feature that is available in Sheets or Slides or anything like that. It's just Google Docs. But you can use this. Let me zoom in a little bit. So from any Google Doc, you can look for this checklist feature. And if you add it here, then even if you don't turn it into a task, it's a very satisfying, like, I did the thing, I get to check it off. I love checking off tasks. So, but what you can do now is you can use this checklist feature and you can assign as a task. So I could assign this to myself, and again with the due date or not, or I could assign this to somebody else, which is really cool. So if you're collaborating on a project and you're building out like, who's doing what by when, you can use these features to keep kind of that task checklist contained in one document, which is really a cool feature. But I don't want to assign Lisa a task, so I'll assign myself a task. And then you can always see here by hovering over the bubble next to it who it's assigned to, who it was assigned from, and when it's due. You can also edit these, so if you need to give yourself a different date or timeline or whatever, and then those tasks populate by default in your My Task list. And when you can cross it off here, and it will cross off there, and on your calendar, and all that fun stuff. So the next thing, does anyone have a question about that before I dive into Google Drive? Okay, not hearing anybody. I'm going to switch screens. All right. Okay, the first thing I want to highlight about Google Drive is the difference between shared drives and My Drive, which you can see over on the left. Yep, Lisa, yeah, I would be happy to do that. Or I can share them and yep, that would be cool. So My Drive is the storage that is just associated with my specific Google Workspace account. And shared drives are these drives that are shared across the organization, across teams. They're not attached to any specific account. And the nice thing about that is if, staff are changing all the time with new people and people moving on, that any content saved in a shared drive doesn't go anywhere when one individual moves on, which is really nice for retaining institutional knowledge. So at the other organization I work for, we agreed that we would not use our My Drive unless we have a decision tree basically, and the question we ask ourselves is, am I the only person who is ever going to be interested in accessing this document? And if the answer is yes, sure, go ahead, save it in your My Drive. But if the answer is no, then we find an appropriate home in the shared drive. And then, of course, there's, there could be other reasons to put something in My Drive, but we really try to put as much as possible in our shared drives. And as an organization, we came together, all of us, and identified what shared drives we felt we needed. So it was, grant teams for specific grants got shared drives. We had an operational shared drive. There's the executive team shared drive, the personnel shared drive. We probably have almost 20 different shared drives for our organization. All right, let's see. The share button. Ooh, there's some really great stuff about the share button that I really love. I recently learned that, so instead of, say for example, you have a flyer or a file, folder, whatever, you've got something that you need to share with, the 50 employees at the library. Instead of typing 50 people's names into this share button, what you can do is use the Google group email addresses. Like if you knew you had a file that needed to go to the whole Bev staff, you could share it with Bev staff at noblenet.org. You can share those. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to be, everyone will get an email notification about that and they'll be like, what is this? Who's this Carrie person? But you can use Google group email addresses like that, which is really nifty. You can set those permissions just like anyone to viewer, commenter, editor. In addition to that, one setting I really, really love, and this is my personal address. I think this is really good when you're sharing files like with someone you're collaborating maybe outside of the library. So what you can do when you add whoever the person is with their email, I'm going to take myself back off of this, but after you've added them to it, you can go back to the share list and you can, at any time you can go in and you can remove access from someone. But now what you're also able to do is add an expiration date. So if you know you're working with an outside partner for a month or 2 months, you can share all the files with them and then add a date that you want their access to be revoked, which is a really neat feature that's pretty new on Google that I appreciate a lot. The next tidbit is shortcuts. So shortcuts I find particularly useful in Google Drives when people share files with you. Because if someone shares something with me, the only place I can really find it in my drive is in this big, gigantic list of files. And for me personally, that's not ideal. So what you can do is use shortcuts. And the way so say someone shares, this is a file I shared with myself the other day. You can select the file and you can say add shortcut to drive. And then if I have my own organizational system in a shared drive that I'm using, I can go to that spot and I can add a shortcut to this file. And it will ask you, you're about to share the file with these people who are added on that shared drive, and it just confirms, do you want them to be viewer, commenter, editor? And then you click add shortcut. So I'm gonna do that. And the way that works is that if I then go to, and this would be the same as if I was putting it in my drive, but if I go to the reference share drive and I go to the Google Workspace training, now there's this shortcut, which is always identified by the circle in the bottom left-hand corner with the little arrow. So if I double click on this, it will take me to that file. And I'm going to close that. An additional super helpful thing about shortcuts is that you can actually rename them a different name from the original file name. So if someone names something that doesn't work well with your brain and how you want to refer to that file, you can, without renaming the actual file itself, you can rename the shortcut to that file in a manner that makes sense to you. So that's a handy dandy little doodah right there. Questions. Let me do a little question break. Okay, we are going to continue on then. All right, let me do a screen share again. We're gonna go back to Google Drive. I'm going to delete this shortcut because we don't need some random shortcut somewhere. Okay. A neat little tool here in the priority area of Google Drive. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a thing called Workspaces. And what these are basically mini storage files. It's almost like, I don't know how to make a good analogy for it. But basically, you can create a workspace. It will hold up to 25 files. And you can choose them from, all over your My Drive or your shared drive. And it's just a nice way to put your really high touch files in a place that means you don't need to navigate through like a file tree or keep searching for, you've put them in this workspace so you can find them really quickly. And you can always, after you've added them, you can always remove them as well, remove from Workspace.
And you, Carrie, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you say that's good for both your own My Drive and any other shared drives?
So, right, when you create a workspace, it's something only you can see. And it's basically just a way for you to pull files into a feed that lets you access them quicker. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. I have personally found that I started using workspaces, and then I started to realize over time, every few months I'd be like, oh wow, I haven't really looked at that workspace. And then just recently I probably deleted 5 workspaces. So they're a neat tool, and I've found them help, depending on the cycle of files, I found them more helpful than other times. But it is a helpful organizational tool. And you can always delete a workspace if it's no longer needed. And when you delete it, it doesn't delete the files. It's just removing the sort of bucket that it's putting the files in.
Can you share a workspace with another coworker?
No, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately. But if you do, get into using shared drives with teams, almost making shared drive folders can almost function in the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And all right, let me scroll back up here. So another neato little tidbit, and this one is, again, I'm sure that many of you know this, but you can add stars to files and folders, and when you add them, they will be in this starred area. So I tried to put things that I'm working on a lot, or documents I'm in on the daily. I usually will add a star to them. And the way you do that is you can go to any file, you can find the 3 dots, and then you can click add to starred. If you are actively in a file, actually, here, let's do this. If you're actively in a file, the star option is along the top edge by the file name. And if you enable that, it will then show up in that feed, which is just a fun tool. And that's something that you can do on slides, docs, sheets. It's kind of across the file types. Any questions before I move on to the next little bit? Okay. I'm going to show you the view detail and activity feed, which is, if any of, I self-identify as a nosy person. So if I happen to be in a meeting with other nosy people, this is kind of a neat setting. So if I want to, oh, I should show you that too. So actually, for any document, you can see version histories, and that will show you, who edited what on what date at what time, which is kind of neat. And you can always restore to previous versions or rename different versions, make copies. It's kind of a neat little feature. So that's one way to be nosy, which is fun. And then another way is, so you can go to any file in your Google Drive. You can go over here and you can click on View Details. So this shows not only the location that the file originates from, who owns it, when it's edited last. If you click on this activity feed, you can see who has been in there and who has been making edits to it. It's just kind of like, if you do have a reason to be nosy in that way, you can be nosy in that way. It's just kind of like I don't know. Google is a little creepy sometimes, and that's a little bit of like the creepier side of Google to me.
Carrie, can you shut that off?
I don't believe so. If you can shut it off, it's probably at like the noble, like the primary domain admins, but I actually don't think you can shut that off. So everyone be aware. And then this is the last little gem that I just wanted to let people know about as well are these. You have the ability to get and adjust notifications for docs, sheets, slides, any kind of like editable file. And you can access those by going whatever file you're in. If you go to Tools and then you go down to Notification Settings, you can pick from this menu. So if you really need to be aware of edits because you're working on something really time sensitive, you can sign up to get notifications when anything's been added or removed. If you've been tagged in a comment or have had a task assigned to you. You can get them only if you want them, if they relate to you, or if you want to know everything that's going on in the document, you can also do that as well. So that's just kind of a nice thing. Like if you really need to be aware of what's going on in certain files, that can be really helpful to get notifications like that. So any questions before we get to the juicy naming convention? It's not really juicy. It's really dry, but it's kind of fun. So, and this is, it's a little bit hard talk through like a file naming convention because it's a very visual thing. So I actually added this slide today. So at my other job, we used to not have any kind of file naming convention. Everyone worked in, individual Gmail accounts. Everything was very partitioned. We weren't even really using Dropbox effectively together. So it was just like the Wild West on everyone's computer. And when we came into this like collaborative shared environment, we very quickly realized one of our major pain points was no one knew what other things were called or where to find them. And we figured out the where to find them thing by talking through what shared drives we wanted to create and why and who would be on which drives and all that. But the what to name them thing, we had to kind of make some basic rules around. And the first things that we considered were we had to remember that Google Drive is a search first environment. So I guess, traditionally, if you're saving files on your computer, you're usually navigating through a folder tree. And with Google Drive, it's really optimized for you to use the search drive bar up here. It has some really nice advanced search options as well. I know we're librarians, we love our search options. And some of the general rules that we agreed on were when we're naming a file or a folder, we need to put the most important component of that name at the front side of it. And the reason why we do that is computers will sort files, numerically and alphabetically. So at first we were putting, the program initial or abbreviation up at the front of every file. And then when we were searching for files, it was just like a wall of abbreviations, and the important detail in the folder and file names was getting lost to the right side. So just visually, we realized we needed to start moving those like key components to the front side of the names, like putting the word budget and then the abbreviation for the program, and then the year of after, for example. We just recently switched over to using spaces between words and numbers. Unfortunately, for 18 months, we didn't realize we were not doing that right. We had, sadly, I gave the guidance that we shouldn't have spaces because that was more of like a traditional file naming convention. But Google Drive's search function is like optimized to search for words in the file names with the spaces. So if we were running them all together, and if you searched without spaces with the wrong word before the other, even though you knew that's how you named the file, it would not come up in the search results. So we just had to switch over to using spaces. For date formats, and again, this is because of how computers sort information. Like, we want to make sure if a file requires a date or some sort of year or month marker on it, that we were putting it either at the very front of the file name, so it would keep all of those important date files together, or we put it, if it's less important, we will put it at the end. But to make sure everything, for 1 year was grouped together, we use a 4-digit year. We don't use the spaces when it comes to these date formats. We do a 2-digit month and a 2-digit day. and that will keep the way a computer will sort it will be, all the years. It will keep '01 for January, so then all the January files together, and then beyond that. For digit formats, it's a 2-digit minimum, and this is usually if you're making different versions of the same document and you need to denote it with the V, like V1, V2. So we do V01, '02, '03, etc. because the computer will, if we don't do that, it will put V11 before V1, and '01 will come before 11 in a compute, the way computers work. So we're just trying to do everything we can to keep stuff orderly. We basically, like, if you're using a generic word in a file name like draft or letter or final or something like that, we put it at the end, not at the beginning. And of course, no special characters. And then as an organization, we built a list of like common abbreviations that we use. So everyone was at least a little bit on the same page around what abbreviations, if we saw it in a file name, we could be like, oh, okay, that one. And we have a list of them. So file naming has been like a really big adjustment at the organization I work for. I know we have a few minutes left. I want to leave time for questions, but some of the ways that we've adopted these things as an organization is that, again, we only try to use shared drives. In all of our different team meetings, we have built into our agenda format a block just to bring up issues related to Google Workspace or Google Drive. So if someone has made a major change to a shared drive, they can share that information. So that has helped us a lot as an organization. And then just individually, and I think a lot of us aren't great at it, but we're trying to be better about using shortcuts. Because our rule of thumb is like, you create a file in the shared drive that it's most related to, and then if it's related to 3 other shared drives in a lesser degree, trying to remember to add shortcuts in the appropriate places in other locations. And one thing I just noticed with my team at my other job is that everyone was so afraid of file, like how they were going to like name the wrong file, the wrong thing. And like, and I worry about it too, but I just try to remind them and remind myself, like, no one is going to die because of how you name the file. Like, we're going to find stuff. And worst case scenario, you could pop into a space and add a chat like, geez, I just can't find this file. Can someone help me out? And they always do. So I'll open it up to questions with that, and I'll make sure I made a homemade like file naming convention doc you are welcome to refer to, and then a cheat sheet tip. You're welcome to like get links to these help articles to adopt some of these things, but yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
Just catching up on the chat too.
Yeah, well, this was absolutely great. I mean, who knew? I learned so much. I knew that there were a bunch of like advanced features and cool stuff, but sometimes you just get in a rut and you don't, you just use the same old thing, and it's great to learn new ways to do things. So thank you so much.
Yeah, this was super helpful, Carrie, and I think I'm a little old school and really like file structures, so Google Drive sometimes makes me nuts for its focus on searching, but I got to get with the program, so it's fine. But I appreciate these tips.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we just at our organization we just tried to maximize the communication around this stuff, and that has what. And when we were adopting these, we went through about 12 months of chaos, and it was worse before it was better. And now we're at the past 18 months point, and it is like, whoa. It is so much better and easier, and our communication is so much like we're much more efficient. But I mean, it was painful. It was painful. Well, any other questions?
I think we're good.
Cool.
I would love, Megan, if you could put them up on the internet somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be awesome.
Will do.
Cool. Yeah, I'll put all these files in the reference shared drive, and I'll make sure I share them with you so you can do what you need to do with them. So,
Thank you.
cool. All right, everybody.
All right.
Well,
Thanks a bunch.
thanks so much. See y'all soon.